Hey guys, Post here. Welcome back to another Pokemon Masters video. And after yesterday's Strike tier list, if you guys didn't catch that, it's on the channel. You could check that out. I'm gonna go over supports because apparently you guys want me to do supports as well. As for supports, there really isn't as many supports in the game as strikers. So and supports, they're more like categorical in comparison to strikers. I mean, I guess you could categorize strikers, mostly, but strikers, some do have, clear power differences between them, but supports are more categorical. So when ranking supports, it's mostly ranking them by their category, like, are they crit buffers, are they defense buffers, are they special attack buffers or whatever, right? So that's what generally ranking supports are, because again, they're just categorical buffers, right, for the most part. So anyways, let's go over this. Before we go over this, again, all the other stuff that I talked about in the striker tier list apply as well. It's totally subjective. I don't expect anyone to agree 100% with me on that, on this, and that's completely fine, and I don't mind at all. So anyways, let's get into this then. So we're gonna go. Obviously, these are not F tiers. I'm just throwing them in here so it's easier for me to organize. So I don't like looking, spend like half the video trying to look for these guys in this whole pile, right? So starting from the first one, Lunatone, I'd put in D tier. I could see an argument for C tier. And before I get into that, also something I didn't have the time to get through because yesterday's video was a bit long, but it was honestly not long enough because a lot of things I didn't go over, which is unfortunate, but not sure a lot of people would like to see an hour-long tier list discussion video, so I tried to shorten it as much as possible, but it was still lacking so much information. So for the tiers, basically S tier is reserved for someone special that does something that no one else in the game does, and it's incredibly strong. That's the honest take on it. If you want generic answer is, it's just, the best support in the game. But, not really. There's, again, supports are situational. They're not as situational as tech. They're more broadly used, but, they're categorical, right? So, S is, generally very, very strong, right? You can use it in a lot of scenarios, all that stuff. A plus is you could use it in most scenarios as well. A is also really, really good. That's why I have A plus and A and not like A and B. I find the A plus and A is pretty similar or pretty close. Not similar, but pretty close. And then you got a slight drop off to C, which are still generally usable. They have some really, really good situations where you can use them that can make them really strong. And then D is decent units, replacements for stuff that they could be replacements for other sync pairs that you maybe not have, right? But and generally could have some niche uses. E is just really niche, and then F is just incredibly niche, like extremely situational. So anyways, reason why I put Lunatone in D is it's a good buffer. Like, it buffs both your attack and special attack, which is nice, but that's like about all it has going for it. And like sync pairs that have both special attacks and physical attacks are kind of rare. There are some really, really good ones, right? Obviously Sceptile, Solgaleo, those are big ones. I guess potentially Dragonite as well, but they're just not as common, so it's not as crazy as a buff. And then again, aside from that, your other buff is special defense all or something. Not the craziest buff ever. So there's that, I guess. And basically how I rank these guys are just categorical. So as they are really categorical. If you look at supports, right, there's crit buffers, speed buffers, move gauge buffers, attack buffers, special attack buffers, right? So what I generally value is I value crit probably the most, just because of how incredibly broken the crit mechanic in this game is, right? And then maybe speed, move gauge, just to the new co-op changes. Then after that, probably just your regular attack, special attack buffers. And then after that, the other stuff, right? So again, decent buffs. Overall, does have a, not as bulky as a lot of the other supports could be. That's also a slight issue with Lunatone. It's not that big of an issue because it's co-op, right? Bulk is honestly not It might mean bulk's good, but, you know, it's just not as good as it is in single player. So moving on. Next, we have Hilbert. I'd put Hilbert in A, and this might be a bit too high for some people, but I personally feel Hilbert deserves this because Hilbert can get you +6 physical attack on turn 2, which is, you know, that's not something anyone else could do. Also, Hilbert has very, very high bulk, so there's that as well. And Hilbert also has X speed, which, again, X speed in this meta is much, much better than it was before, right? Just because of how slow the move gauges or recover in comparison to how quick the battles go, right? So I'd say Hilbert's pretty good. Also has Impervious. Not that it matters that much. Impervious, you know, you're not going to use him to attack. And this is a support tier list, so we're not going to talk about offensive capabilities by the support units too much. So there's that as well. Moving on, next one got Rosa. Rosa, I'd also put in this tier. Rosa's a bit of a special case because if you look at its set, it doesn't look too special. You got X special attack all, which is nice. And then you also have move gauge recovery, a time to energize, which is also really, really good. And if those were on separate units, then those units would be much lower. But they're both on the same unit, and that's really good. And Rosa has and is still the highest bulk unit in the game, which again in co-op is not as relevant as it is in single player. But if you're here to, you know, if you need to swap out a striker to save them from a sync move or something, Rosa is usually your go-to tank for that. You know, the best natural tank in the game, and with all the other stuff, it's just an overall really, really good support to use. So moving on, we got the other Rosa, Rosanta and Delibird. This one I'd put in A+, which would potentially be controversial, I guess. I could see why people don't like Rosanta as much as I personally do, which again, tier list, completely biased. I'd admit my bias here. I am biased towards move gauge recovery and speed. So Rosanta's biggest weakness, as I talk up Rosanta, I just talk about her biggest weakness first, is that Rosanta does not have crit buffs. If Rosanta had crit buffs, like, it's over, right? It would be, you know, like a top tier. Well, it's still top tier. Like A+ is not bad, right? So yeah, unfortunately, it does not have crit buffs, but it does have both move gauge recovery and speed buffs, and also random buffs from all the presents, which is incredibly unreliable. I would not count on any of those stats, you know, going my way ever. But if they sometimes do by chance, then that's cool, right? You know, you got a slight chance of sometimes getting some decent buffs out of that. But you also have X attack all, which is a more reliable way of buffing. Rosanta also has okay-ish bulk, and again, just the move gauge recovery plus speed is just so unbelievably incredible. Like, so many so many strikers need Rosanta to really function well, right? Like Lance, Solgaleo. If you don't have like a Rosanta or some other really good like speed, or like maybe Rosa and Hilbert, and that's why Rosa and Hilbert are really high as well. If you don't have these guys on your team, it's really, really hard to function those folks in co-op, like, unless, you know, you're fighting something like something that you're specifically designed to beat. You know, just fighting normal other neutral co-ops, really hard to function without any of these supports for stuff like, again, Dragonite, Solgaleo, and a lot of other move gauge intensive strikers, right? So there's that. Moving on, we got Swanna. Swanna's a bit of a fan favorite, I guess. A lot of people like Swanna. I put Swanna in C. Swanna, obviously, the speed buff is really, really good, but she doesn't really have much else other than that, which, again, speed buff's really, really good. Potion's really, Potion's not the greatest, but, you know, it's useful in certain scenarios. Like, there are some really, really good sync pairs where you could throw in Swanna in with a comp, right? Like, Hilda plus Swanna is really, really good combo, because obviously Hilda's move doubles her attack by the amount of speed you increase it by. So, you know, obviously Hilda could do that herself, a flame charge, but, you know, if you got a Swanna there, Hilda could instead spend some time, well, won't spend like as long as you usually would to get that speed buff. You could only, for Hilda, you'll only have to flame charge once, and then have Swanna go for take flight. Is that what it's called? Take flight? And then you'd get Hilda up. Also have some defensive capabilities as well. Also, Potion obviously helps Hilda there with the recoil and all that. So it's a really, really great partner for Hilda. Not just Hilda, a lot of other sync pairs as well. Like, again, Lance is another decent one where you could pair it with. Although I'd argue stuff like, you know, Rosanda's probably better for that job. But, you know, Actually, Swanna. Yeah, I'd still say Rosanta is a bit better, just because like the move gauge increase is just so much more important than using potion, and then after using now or never, then using potion too, because that's really risky. But anyways, moving on. So there's Swanna. Swanna's pretty decent. Moving on, we got Roxanne. Roxanne, I would put also an 8 here, and this might surprise a lot of people, just because it's a 3-star, it's whatever. Roxanne, like, first of all, Roxanne has really, really great buffs. Study Buddies is one of the better buffing moves in the game, right? So there's that. You got, the special attack buff and also speed buff as well. Like, you got like 2 for 1, right? In that one move. Incredible buff. Like, I could potentially see an argument for Roxanne being even higher, right? I could see an argument for Roxanne in A+. I'm personally not putting it in there just because, in comparison to the other A+, I just don't think it has as much as the others would offer. Also, another slight disadvantage for Roxanne is the natural bulk you get from Roxanne isn't that great. Moving on, Roxanne also has wide guard, which is really, really nice as well. It's useful in quite a few co-op challenges, like more than you would think, right? Wide guard where you could use it. So there's that. Moving on, next one's Phoebe. So Phoebe is the elusive S tier support, and I actually thought about this. I was thinking, should I really put Phoebe in her own tier aside for above Rosanta and the other A pluses? And I settled on yes, just because Phoebe is just such a special support. Like, a lot of these characters, like maybe aside from Rosanta, there you have other supports that could take their place, right? And Phoebe is just at the moment is just irreplaceable. Maybe when even when Leaf comes out, honestly, like Leaf does not have crit buffs, even though Leaf again is really, really decent with the buffs as well and the baton pass kind of capabilities. But again, Phoebe, for those of you who don't know, can buff attack, can buff move gauge, can buff crit by up to max. It has direct hit plus, one of the rare supports with direct hit plus. And also, after Phoebe dies, it passes on the stats to the next striker. So not only are you because of most of these supports, they can only in co-op they can only support your teammates, the 2 side strikers, right? I mean, they look like sides when you're playing, right? But you can only support the other 2 strikers in your team, and then after you swap out your supports, and then you're starting, after you use all the support moves, and then it's time for you to DPS as well. You really don't got much. Like, you have to start buffing if you're using a self-sufficient striker, right? And then you just don't get any of those benefits. But Phoebe is different. Once Phoebe dies, your next striker gets all the benefits that both your teammates get as well, which are really, really good benefits, right? You got physical attack buffs, dire hit, which again, dire hit plus is probably one of the strongest. It's a top tier move in the game, right? Dire hit plus is just so incredibly strong. And then Phoebe also has a mechanism to take herself out, as terrible as it sounds. Also, Phoebe actually does decent damage with double edge, right? Double edge, you can take yourself out, help your opponent to take Phoebe out, to help yourself get those, pass those buffs onto your next striker as soon as possible. Once you're done buffing with Phoebe, it's time to self-destruct and take yourself out, and then get your next striker in and go ham. So again, that's why I put Phoebe above Rosanta and the other A+ supports, and I think it's pretty justified. Anyways, I rest my case. Moving on, we got Maylene and Meditite, and I'll put them in C tier. They're really, really good, but they're in the right situations. This is a really, really good sync pair, and even the wrong situations, it's not bad either, right? So you got crit increases, not +2. It's not, it's not anything. It's not like dire hit plus. It's +1. You could get it up to 80%. It's not max, but, depending on who you're supporting, that might not be a terrible idea, right? It's not a terrible situation. And also, you give guaranteed hits, which accuracy buffing is not really a thing in this game. Like, the only sync pair that's in the game at the moment that buffs accuracy is, like, straight buffs accuracy, is Rosanta, and that's like by RNG. It's not even guaranteed to buff accuracy. So Meditite's one of the rare ones that could kind of, it's not directly buffing accuracy. I mean, it kind of literally is. I mean, it doesn't buff accuracy for like a max or whatever, but it makes your next hit a guaranteed hit, which helps a lot of sync pairs, right? Lance is one with that 90% on Hyper Beam, which you do not want to miss. For Alligator's Mega Kick, that's a huge one as well. So Meditite plus for Alligator is a really, really good combo, right? That you want to potentially run in co-op. So once for Alligator's, pick up the pace is gone, you probably want to, go and help increase its crit rate, and also make sure that those mega hits or mega kicks do not miss, right? And potentially Sogayo, but Sogayo does have self accuracy buffs, right? So, but it also costs 3 bars, but that's more situation. I don't really see you using it with Sogayo that much in comparison to the other strikers, right? So, moving on, this guy, let's not talk about, spoiler, he's F tier. Let's just move the F tier to the back first. So, moving on, let's go to Lyra first. So, Lyra I would also put in C tier. Some people think Lyra's not as good. I think Lyra's not bad. Like, Lyra, sure, you need Sunny Day to make her, completely optimized. But even without Sunny Day, like, Lyra's buffs aren't even terrible. Like, if you check Lyra, and also Lyra has a lot of, Lyra has decent bulk as well, which is always, nice to have. But, Lyra has, oops, wrong page. But Lyra has crit buffs, which is nice. Crit buffs are nice, even though it's not sharply without sunlight, but it's still got crit buffs, and it's not only or not the crit in Sunny, speed is in Sunny, but it doesn't get you max Dar Hit. She kind of got shafted on this one, but again, Dar Hit Plus is just so incredibly powerful. But Dar Hit All is still nice. You could get it up to 80% in 2 turns, and then Sunny Side Up raises attack, special attack, and speed of all allied sync pairs. It's sharply in weather, but or not weather, in sunny weather. But even without sunny weather, you're still getting, +2 to attack, special attack, and +2 to speed, which is not terrible, right? Of course, you can't compare that to stuff like Hilbert or whatever, right? But or even Roxanne, but it's still not bad. Light Screen's far. Light Screen is very niche, but everything else, I mean, again, so again, Solar Shield, all this stuff, you need Sun to really optimize it. But again, even without Sun, I don't think Lyra's that terrible without Sun, because again, I just value Dar Hit so much, right? So moving on, your player with Torchic. This is an easy A plus. This guy is just so good. Torchic, obviously, special attack buffs, physical attack buffs, crit buffs, decent bulk. There you go. It's pretty simple. It's definitely one of the best supporters in the game, and it's used in a lot of different comps as well. A lot of different co-op team comps that you'd want to run Torchic in. Helps a lot of the strikers. Lance is a big one. Lance needs supports a lot in comparison to other strikers. That's why I'm always mentioning Lance. Because Lance with support and without support is such a huge difference in comparison to all the other strikers, right? So, Torchic is great for Lance. Torchic into like Hilbert or Rosanta or Rosa, right? That's just going to make Lance an absolute monster, and Torchic is a pretty crucial part to that, right? So you got Torchic in A+. Moving on, Cheryl, I'd go with E. I was thinking maybe F, but I don't think it's that bad. Some people think it's F. I personally don't think so. Just because, as bad as Cheryl is, Cheryl does have some redeeming qualities in that it does, I guess, buff move gauge, which is something I do kind of value. If we could pull up Cheryl over here. And Cheryl does, like, okay-ish damage, I guess. Again, damage, I'm not factoring in too much here because it is sport tier list. So there's that. But, again, apply yourself. Heal plus move gauge buff is not terrible, right? Of course, it's not really useful in a lot of scenarios in comparison to a lot of the other supports. But, it's a kind of generic buff that you could kind of used everywhere, but it's just not that great. But like almost everyone could use this, right? It's a universal buff that applies to almost everyone. It's just not something incredible, right? Okay, the other thing it has is full heal, which is just like, it's just not that great. Full heal, I mean, remove status conditions is nice, but like, why would you use Cheryl if you could use like Marley instead, right? So there's that. Also Charon's passive. Oh, it's not Charon's passive. Oops, no, I was thinking someone else. Never mind. But yeah, that's basically why Charon is over there. So moving on, Marley. Speaking of Marley, I'd throw Marley in C tier. Marley is one of the better, 3-star supports in the game, right? And also something that you would probably want to consider upgrading into a 4-star. Marley has speed buffs, and Marley has something that's just better than Charon's full heal, which is We're Standing Strong, which I'm not going to open it. We're Standing Strong, which is basically it protects your team from status conditions. There you go. Instead of like using a full heal on someone after they get status, why not just prevent statuses altogether before it happens? Like, Charon, like when you're trying to use full heal, right? You're trying to use it when one of your teammates is statused. So that means you'll have to swap out of your potentially striker, which already has buffs on it, I would assume, if it does have self buffs. And then you're taking that out, and then you're throwing in Charon, swapping it in, and then you'll have to heal, and then you'll have to swap back into your striker. It's a hassle. You're wasting buffs. You're wasting turns, right? Instead, Marley, you just start with Marley, go We're Standing Strong, throw in a few speed buffs if you want, if you need, right? And then swap her out, and then you don't have to worry about her anymore. That's basically, I mean, I guess you could take her out to tank a sync move if you want. I mean, Marley's bulk's actually pretty good, right, as well. So moving on, we got Cheryl. And I would also rank Cheryl higher than some other people would rank her. So again, for those who don't know what Blissey does, because I don't see a lot of people talking about her a lot, so I'd assume not a lot of people know what she does. She does sharply raise special attack, so she does have X special attack all, which is nice, and that's kind of why she's in here. And also her passive Healing Hand too is actually not terrible. Occasionally removes all status conditions of all sync pairs after the Pokemon uses a move. Again, it's nothing. It's not like We're Standing Strong or whatever, right? It's not Marley, but it's something, I guess. And also, Out of Patience heals, right? Just restores some HP, sharply raises allies' defense, special defense. Again, I don't think defensive buffs are that great in this game in co-op, just because of how opponent sync moves work, right? But it's something. It's not just a potion. Okay, so there's that. Moving on. So, Drake was a tough one for me. Drake, I was either going between E or F, and I kind of rested on E. Here's the thing. Drake basically is a defensive buffer. You got, physical defense buffs and special defense buffs. And that's not really useful, unfortunately. But Drake also does have like Intimidate. It's called like Terror or something, Terrorize or something. But it's basically Intimidate. Every time he swaps in, lowers their opponent's attack. It's something, I guess. It's just that the fact lowering your opponent's attack is usually better than increasing your defense, right? Just because, again, how sync moves work, they wipe your bust. But the caveat is, and I guess increasing defense might be better than lowering attack is. Sometimes your enemies are just immune to that. So, Drake is it's the best, I guess, defensive support in the game, and you don't have anything else. I mean, I guess you have some others that could do some of that, but he's the all-in-one package, right, for defense. I could see an argument for F. If someone wants to put an F, I don't mind, but I'll put Drake in E just because he does have a few options for that, dealing with different scenarios, right? Again, it's extremely niche. You're very unlikely to use it, maybe in like EX Rosa or something. Incredibly niche. Moving on, the last non-F, I would say, is Glacia. And some people would put Glacia in F. Again, I don't think Glacia is that bad. Of course, Glacia is not the greatest, but Glacia does have some redeeming qualities, I guess. There are some really, really niche uses for Glacia. And, you know, after it megas, its stats aren't terrible, I guess. So there's that. But for Glacia, X regen all and attention here. So what Glacia basically does is it's a taunter. You know, it's an aggro drawer, which is just not as efficient as going 3 DPS. But if there's a really, really niche scenario where you need an aggro drawer, Glacier's not bad, right? Because aside from it, like in comparison to the other aggro drawer, like this aggro drawer actually is not just like a pure aggro drawer. It's a more offensive aggro drawer. It also sharply raises special attack of all allied sync pairs, right? So it has that as well. And again, X regional, not the greatest, but I could see some niche uses. But attention here is not a terrible aggro drawing move. As for its bulk, it's not bad, but in comparison to other supports, it could definitely be better. And after you mega it into Mega Glalie, it does some damage by dying. So basically getting your what Glalie's whole job is to do is just to die. That's basically what you're here for, because it has like explosion after it dies. Last word, uses explosion immediately after fading. So kind of sad, but again, really, really niche uses sometimes. All right, for Misty and Starmie, I just don't see a use for Misty and Starmie like almost at all. It's just like Misty and Starmie. It's like, what are these buffs? Special defense, evasiveness, and heal. Yeah, no. I mean, okay, evasiveness is not terrible. But incredibly RNG dependent, right? But like special defense, like Misty has like 0 offensive support. And again, right now, damage is meta, DPS is meta, right? Tanking is not very viable. Like stalling's not a viable strategy at the moment, unfortunately. So what are you doing, right? Because again, sync moves just wipes your tanks every time, anyways. So or your I guess your tanking buffs or defensive buffs. So incredibly irrelevant here. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. I guess Healing Hand could be occasionally nice, but that's about it. So, and then the other one, I forgot his freaking name. As you got to tell. Oh, Marlin. Okay. Marlin, another aggro drawer, except just a more defensive aggro drawer, which I personally, again, just do not prefer over Glalie, which actually raises special attacks. So there's that. But anyways, that's basically it. The support tier list. Again, I probably have had some explanations that I forgot to get to, but that's basically the gist of it. Phoebe's the best, and Marlin's the worst. No, I'm kidding. Again, I mean, half kidding. Like, well, Phoebe's just much better than Marlin. That's a lot. That's a true. That's not a lie, right? But anyways, again, totally subjective. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Like and enjoy this video. Subscribe to a new channel for some more Pokemon Masters content. You can join the Discord and yell at me for being super wrong and not having a Glalie at S tier, right? So again, you could do that as well. It's in the description box, and I'll see you guys in the next